And we are back with our series on Google Sheets. Now, as I've mentioned in some of the other videos, if you guys are using Office Excel, a lot of these formulas are going to be the same, and a lot of these tricks and techniques will be similar. I strongly recommend Google Sheets for a few reasons. Number one, it's perfectly compatible with Excel, so you can always download it and have it work the same in Excel. Number two, it's 95% as powerful as Excel. Excel has a few more tools that this one does not have. But most importantly, unless you're using Microsoft Teams or some sort of shared system of workflow, Google Sheets is online and syncs to your Google account, which means multiple people can log into it at the same time and work on it together. You can have your entire team logged into a single Google Sheet. You'd actually see little bubble heads up here. And you would actually be able to see where people are working. So right now I've got this cell selected, but if other people were in this same sheet with me, whatever they're doing, I would actually be able to see their cursor. I would be able to see what cell they've selected and what they're working on. So it's a really great way to collaborate and work together on things, rather than having to, download a file, edit that file offline, then upload it, make sure they have the right version, put it in an email attachment, then they download it, they make some changes, but then you've forgotten which changes which. None of that happens if you're using a synced or an online file that everybody has access to at the same time, and it's always up to date. All right. The reason we're doing this again is just to provide you guys with some skills in terms of designing your own systems to track expenses, to prepare budgets for a project proposal, to put together a report for a grant. These are kind of fundamental skills that are not necessarily common amongst, people that are not accountants. And so it's not an expectation that we need to be an expert in this stuff. However, having a little bit of a basic understanding of how to use these sorts of formulas can make your life a whole lot easier when it comes to any of the subjects that we just talked about. And so at Fauna in Focus, we're a very small team. We don't have the money to have, accountants and auditors and doing everything with handling our finances for us. So we have no choice but to do it ourselves. And one of the ways in which we do that is by designing formulas and sheets that make everything flow much faster and more smoothly. And then once we've created it one time, we don't need to create it again. We can just duplicate it and change some things around. And it just saves a lot of time and energy and effort in the long run. And more importantly, you can use these same skills and formulas for so many different things. I mean, we're now looking at just this very simple budget, but this could be used to collect survey data. You could use this to do scientific research gathering. A lot of these skills are applicable as well to the field of statistics and data collection and data entry. So these are little tricks that will help you out in all sorts of use cases for Excel or Google Sheets. And so today we're going to practice, we're going to rehearse what we did in the last lesson with using array formulas, but at the same time we're going to learn something new about date. And so I'm going to make this date column a little bit bigger. And what we're going to do is first look at the standard date format. So if you had one column like this and you were required to enter the date, well, how would you do it? Well, you might go, something like this. But then you'll see that Google Sheets has converted it into its own format. Now you can set the way this displays by selecting on that entire column, coming to Format, coming to Number, and looking at Date. And there's a few different options for date that you can see here. And so if I select this, then you'll see it changes to this style. However, you can also go to Format, Number, and then we can go, instead of looking at these date and time, date whatever, we can go to More Formats, and then More Date and Time Formats. And we have all these formats to choose from, right? And the reason that you should do this is because it will make sure that it's consistent across your entries. So it will always come in the same way. And my personal recommendation is to do something like this. So this option here that you can see is not one that I recommend, because some people and some countries, America, do this backwards. They do month, day, and then year. And this can totally destroy your data if you're not careful, right? So I strongly recommend doing something like that. right? So even an abbreviation, something like that, is probably my recommended way to have the date show up. And so what you'll see is that now it's shown up as 15 December 2020. Nobody can confuse this with something else, right? And so, for example, if you have 12/10/2020, well, is that December 12th? December 10th? Or is that the 12th of October? So you see it can be confusing here because of the different ways people write their text. In the way we've set it up, that turns out to be the 10th of December because, again, we're using this thing. And so if you use that format function to set your calendar, your date and time format to be something like this, then what happens is no matter how people enter it, it will automatically convert it into a mode that will let them see, oh, I entered that wrong, right? And you can do things like this. You can either say December 5th, 2020, and it'll figure it out. Like, I didn't even type the full word. I just typed Dec 1, 2020, and it converts it because that's the format that we've set to use here. It understands. It's smart enough to know how to do that. However, that is the bad way to do this. And the reason that is the bad way to do this is because we lose some information about our data. And so what I mean by this is, if you guys remember that financial dashboard that I showed you in the first video on Google Sheets, we will later need to set up sheets that automatically look for the month, the quarter, the year. We'll need all that information separately. And to make our lives and our formulas much, much easier, we need to divide this date up into 3 separate columns for day, month, and year. And the reason we need to do that is because when we are designing a spreadsheet to automatically calculate for everything that happened in the month of July, we can just easily tell it to look for a particular column that is the month and look for the number 7. And if it sees the number 7 in that column, then it does the rest of its calculation. If you try to pull that information out from a date column, there are ways to do it, but they're unnecessarily complicated compared to the trick that I'm about to show you. Okay? So the first thing I'm going to do here is something a little bit tricky. I'm going to go to row number 2. I'm going to right click and I'm going to add an extra row above. I'm also going to come to our date column and I'm going to insert to the right 1, 2, 3 columns. So I've inserted 3 columns to the right here. And then these things are really big. So one trick to resize your columns, if you select this empty box in the corner here, you select your entire formula, you just double click on these spaces here, these lines between the formulas, and it's going to resize everything to fit. Oh, those 3 ones didn't fit. So we're just going to select all 3 of them and drag them to a size that we like. And if you select all 3 of them, they move together. So typically double clicking will scale a cell to fit the contents of that cell. So if you have some really wide text, double clicking here will scale this column to fit the widest thing within your cell. So that's a nice little trick. All right. I forgot I had the totals thing over there. Oh, right. No, see what's happening here is this is giving an error because this formula is still looking here to see if this is empty. And if it's not empty, it's trying to do math, and it can't do math with numbers. With letters, excuse me. All right, so what we've just done is we've just added 3 columns next to our date. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select this date thing here, and I'm going to hold my mouse down in the middle of it, not on the corner. That would duplicate everything, right? We don't want to do that. So I'm just going to hold in the middle and drag to the right to select all of that. And I'm going to come up here to merge cells. Okay? Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in day, month, and year. And we'll go ahead and make those bold. We'll make them align to the center just as before. All right. So what we've just done is we've basically divided up our date into 4 sections. We've got our primary date. We've got our day, month, year. This is the best way to do it. And so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and delete these things that I've manually entered. And what we're going to actually do is we're going to set a function over here that allows us to actually enter with a calendar. And this is great because it's not possible for somebody to type the wrong thing. Now they can click the wrong day, but at least they can't type the wrong thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to select all of column A, and we're going to go to data validation. This is a new thing for us here, data validation. And so when it comes to this data validation pop-up thing, you'll see it's got our range selected. It's going to be basically all of column A. And we're going to tell it, instead of list from a range, we're going to go to date. And then if somebody enters it wrong, we're going to tell it to reject the input. So if they don't enter a good date, it's going to automatically reject it. And then we're going to click save. That's it. Nothing changes. However, look what happens now. If I come up to here and I select here, there's no formula, there's nothing. However, if I start typing numbers or letters, it says, nope, sorry, you can't enter it. You can't enter that. It's violating the data validation rules set for this cell. So how do I get this date in here? If I try to type December, it says, nope, no good. No good. So what do? Double click and you get a calendar. This is the easiest way to enter your date. All right. So you get a calendar. It's going to pop up like this, and you can select thing and it will go in. And again, you can change that format up here to however you'd like it to show. So if we decide that we want our format to be now like this, that's no problem. We can do that. But to enter it, you double click and you can actually select dates manually. All right. So that's the first big trick on using calendars in a good way, using the date function in a good way. However, we still need the day, month, year. Now, you could just go ahead and enter it, right? What is this? Now I've forgotten which format I used. See, this is why I don't like using this this format. So we'll go back to number and let's set it to, yeah, I like that format. So day is the 7th, the month is 11, and the year is 2020 for this one. All right, over here we've got the day is the 25th, the month is 11. Oh, can we make one of these in December maybe? Or yeah, we'll put one in December 1st or something. So you could go ahead and add things manually, right, yourself, but that's not how we do things in Excel. We use formulas. So first I'm going to show you the formula that we're going to use, and then we're going to wrap it in an array formula just as we did before in the last video. So the first formula is super easy. Are you ready for this? Equals day. Select this cell. Close formula. Done. I'm going to oh, here's a good use of the $sign. If I was to drag this over here like that, look what happens. This checks for B3. This checks for C3. Because we've dragged it to the right, my formula is changing where it's looking by one column to the right. So this one, I told it to look for A3. When I drag it to the right, this next one is going to shift what it's looking for over to B3. If I drag that to the right again, this one is going to shift what it's looking for over to C3. None of that is what we want this to do. We want it to always look at A. And so what we're going to do to lock that A in is put a $sign in front of that A. Not in front of the 3, because we need the 3 to change as we go down. That 3 needs to change to column 4 and then column 5, excuse me, row 4, row 5, row 6. So we're not going to put a $sign in front of the 3. If we did that, it would always look at A3 every single time. We just want to lock the A, not the 3. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to enter day, $sign A3. I'm going to drag that to the right. So there we go. Now we've got A3, A3, A3. And if I drag this down, you'll see that's correct, right? So A3, A4, A5, that's all good. I'm going to Control Z to undo that because we're not ready to go down just yet. And now I'm going to come over here and guess what I'm going to change this to? Month. Done. And guess what I'm going to change this to? Year. Done. So that is how you easily and automatically get your formulas to pull the date, the month, and the year from an automatically entered calendar. And so now, if you wanted to do it the old-fashioned way, we can click this and drag it down. And as you can see, all of those dates are now correct. And now, here we come to why array formulas are so important. Look what's happening here. When the calendar is not entered, when we've got it set up using this automatic calendar, when it's not entered, what we're actually seeing here is the default date that calendar is pulling. So this calendar, without actually showing it, is pulling the 30th of December, 1899. I think that's incorrect. And so what we want it to do is show nothing in any of these if there's no date entered here. So by now, this should start to sound familiar to you guys from our last video. You should know what we're going to do. We're going to wrap this in an array formula. So I'm going to go ahead and delete all of these things and all of these things. And I'm just going to look at my first formula again, and we're going to wrap it in an array. So I'm going to go, just remember this day A3, all right? Just remember that for now. I'm going to delete it. We're going to start from fresh. So we're going to do an array formula, and we're going to do if is blank. Did I get that right? Yeah, if is blank. And then what are we looking for? In this case, we're looking for this thing right here. So the date column, the first one. So if is blank A3, but what do we need to do? A3 to the rest of A. We can't just look at A3. We have to look at A3 to the rest of A. So if A3 to the rest of A is blank, then that's our logical expression. So we're going to end that logical expression with the comma. And if it is true that it's blank, then we want nothing. So we're just going to do 2 empty quotation marks. And then now if it's false, what do we want it to do? Then we want it to do the formula day. And what did we say? $A3. And again, remember this little trick, because we're doing an array formula, we always need to add that to the rest of A, and done. And I'm just going to go ahead over here and add that $sign here as well, because we are going to drag this to the right and we don't want that A to move. So I need to put a $sign in front of this A and in front of this A. And I need to actually add that $sign over in front of this A as well. And again, just to remind you what that $sign is doing, it's making sure that my A doesn't become a B. It locks the A as A, right? If I put the $sign in front of 3, it would lock the 3 as a 3. It would never become a 4. I don't want to do that because I do want to be able to drag this formula down, or to send this formula down. But we don't even need to worry about that because we're setting this up automatically. Okay, and I think we just need one more parentheses to close up the formula, and that's that. Boom. Look at that. There goes the day automatically, just from that one formula at the top, automatically filling up the rest of it, right? And so if we go ahead and click here, we add another date. We can click down here, double click, add a date. It's automatically going to be pulling this information. Oh, what happened there? Guys, also just one quick thing that I just noticed, make sure that your day column is formatted just to a automatic, right? Do not let it go to date format. That can confuse this number that shows up here. If you have this day column selected to be a date format, it can really mess up what shows up over here. So just make sure that your format on your day, your month, and your year, all 3 of these columns need to be formatted to just a plain or automatic number. It should not be a date. All right, this one is fine however you want it to be, but B, C, and D, where you've got those formulas, need to be a automatic number, plain number, not anything fancy. All right, so that's our array formula working automatically across all of these to get our day. And what about our month and our year? No problem. I'm going to drag these across, and you'll notice the numbers are now all the same. Why? Because we locked it to A3. And so now all we're going to do is change, as you suspected, the day is going to become the month. Come on. Yep, I can enter that. And the year is going to become the year. And there we go. So again, just to remind you guys how easy this actually is to do, we've entered this formula one time. We only had to design this formula once. After that, it automatically, because it's an array formula, it automatically will fill, because it's an array formula and it's using the isBlank checker for a condition on this date, then anytime a date is entered over here, the column to the right of it will automatically return you the day, the month, and the year. Okay? And the reason that this is so easy to do is because, again, you're just setting it up one time. You drag it to the right and you change this one to the month, this one to the year. Super easy. Takes a few seconds. And so really we've only had to design this formula one time, right? In fact, it's the same formula as we did over here in the previous video. We're just using it under a different condition here to do basically exactly the same thing. It's just going to say, oh, if this is blank, I'm not going to put anything here. And again, the reason this is so important is because now column B, column C, and column D, I'm just going to go ahead and align these a little bit differently. I'm going to align them to the center, and I might make the width a little bit smaller so it's not so crazy. So these columns are now in plain numeric form, right? This is 11, this is 7, this is 12, which makes it very easy for future formulas to automatically filter for month number 12, month number 11, and so on. The day is less important. I don't think that really matters which day of the month things are happening across all the months, but the month and the year will be very, very useful. All right? And we can use this with sum ifs and count ifs and all sorts of things. We can sum things that are only within a certain year or only within a certain month or so on. So having this broken up like this is a great little way to do this. And then the last trick of this lesson is going to be what to do right now with these three columns. And that is this trick. So we're just going to select these three, come to this little dot here, and we are going to hide columns B to D. Done. You'll notice that my columns now go A, E, and we've got these two little black lines here. Don't worry. Your formulas are still there. Those numbers are still there. They're just hidden because we don't actually need to see them. We only need that for formulas later in the future. We don't actually need to see those things wasting space on our screen at any given moment. We will need that later when we're designing formulas that go back to look for those dates. Okay? So now what you've done is you've set up a system. Oh, and by the way, just as we covered in the last one, you just click those dots to open it. We can also lock this sheet. So we'll go to Data, Protect Sheets and Ranges. And so we'll go to Protect, excuse me, my caps lock is on. Protect Date Data, something like that. Set permission. Done. We'll put the emails that you want to have permission to set it, and there's our total permissions. So basically anywhere where we've entered a formula, so in this case here, and here, here, and here, are going to be protected from anybody accidentally editing them. And basically, people will only be able to edit the parts of the spreadsheet that need editing. And so now what happens if somebody double clicks here, they are able to add their date by selecting it on this calendar, right? But what they can't do is mess with these cells over here. These cells are protected. They can't change them. They can't do anything with them. Oh, by the way, see this little red diamond up there? That's telling us that it has to be a date because we told column A to be a valid date, and this is technically within column A. So for data validation, you usually want to remove that from the top thing so you don't get that little red warning symbol. And so the easy way to do that is to just select your title, your axis labels. So in this case, I actually have 2 rows that are going to be making my axis label. So I'm going to select both of them, going to go to data validation, and remove validation. And that will remove validation across the entire spreadsheet, across the top. So just across those sections, I can easily remove that data validation. Right. And so let's go ahead and hide these things again. So I'm just going to select them all, select that little down drop arrow, hide those columns, and we'll just do a couple tests. I'll put a couple more dates down in here. So there we go. We've got March and April of 2021. And if I double click on that column, look at that. It's automatically filled out those things without even having a formula there. The formula is just in that top row there. And again, this will be very useful for our later formulas. So we're going to end this lesson by making sure B, C, and D are locked. H should already be locked. We're going to hide those columns. We've got our first column set up using data validation so that we get the date being the way that this is entered, using that little click in calendar. And that's going to wrap up our lesson. So that was kind of a follow-up to our array formulas with the if and the is blank formula, as well as this data validation trick to allow you to enter a calendar, as well as some formatting things about calendars and numbers. All right, that's going to wrap up this video, and we're going to start to move into slightly more advanced stuff in the next one. I think we'll do some ifs and that kind of stuff.